Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and we're with one of the legends, the kings of legends of wrestling, Jerry the King Lawler. And Jerry, how long have you been in the sport?
I've been wrestling since Colonel Sanders was a private. That's a pretty good while. No, actually, I've been around about almost 30 years now, and started when I was just a mere child, and still going strong. You know, I think a lot of people like to look at age or whatever as being, you know, a reason that you can't compete in whatever it is you want to do anymore. You know, I still enjoy wrestling as much as I did the very first match I ever had. I try to stay in pretty good physical condition and shape, and I think hanging around with a lovely young lady like the cat makes me stay young. And so I plan on continuing to wrestle until I have the worst match on every wrestling card that I'm on, and people just finally have to carry me out of the ring.
And you know, in all of the matches that you had in your career, what was the most intense match you ever had?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I had a match one time with Tommy Rich and Austin Idol, in which actually the match was with Austin Idol, and Tommy Rich came in and interfered, and they were managed, of all people, by Paul Heyman at the time, and they wound up doing a little deal where Austin Idol got my right leg and Tommy Rich got my left leg, and they pulled me into the ring post, and I wound up having to have 2 surgeries over that. So that was pretty intense, and I was out of action for a while. And you know, I've had some injuries at the hands of Joe LeDuc and Terry Funk and guys like that, but that was probably the worst. So I look at that as being one of the most intense matches I've ever had.
Yeah, you know, so you've been also in a lot of matches such as legends like Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, King Kong Bundy. And not only that, you've been with even with Andy Kaufman. How was it to wrestle a gentleman like Andy Kaufman?
Andy was cool. Andy was really misunderstood. A lot of people think that Andy was like a complete nut, and even the movie that we just made, you know, a couple of years ago, Man on the Moon, didn't really portray or show the world the real Andy. Andy was just a neat guy. He was a great wrestling fan. He loved it ever since he was a kid, and he loved being involved with wrestling. And he and I were good friends. And the cool thing about Andy was he would never crack. He would never let anybody in on whatever his scam was that he was pulling. I mean, you know, and that's all Andy did. But he didn't consider himself a comedian. He was a performing artist, and he would go around and do one hoax or one trick after another. And you know, the wrestling thing was he always felt was his crowning achievement. I mean, we really fooled the entire world, even people like David Letterman and all of that. You know, nobody was in on it but Andy and I, and we kept it that way for a long time.
And also, I mean, speaking of Andy Kaufman, when you're doing the movies, I mean, how was it to work like with Jim Carrey and the actual people that worked with him?
Well, Jim Carrey was, I don't know, he and I just didn't hit it off. We didn't get along very well. There was some friction there. And I think mainly because Jim Carrey was trying to take on Andy's persona. He was trying to be Andy Kaufman. And when the filming started for the movie Man on the Moon, you couldn't even refer to Jim Carrey as Jim. Even the directors, the producers, everybody had to refer to him as Andy because he tried to pretend that he was Andy throughout the movie. But the sad part was he missed Andy's character completely. I knew the real Andy. He didn't, and he didn't really have him down. So that's why it was kind of annoying. And he and I just didn't get along. The other people in the movie, Danny DeVito was great. David Letterman was great to work with again. Everybody else connected with the movie was a lot of fun. All of the cast from Taxi were great people. Just Jim Carrey was a little bit, you know.
Was it like a rude awakening to replay that all over again?
No, it wasn't at all. It was certainly. I think that may be one of the first times I really felt and knew the meaning of the word deja vu, because literally when Jim Carrey came in the ring, and when we were doing the wrestling scene especially, and like when he had me in that headlock, and I'm like looking down, and I couldn't see his face, but I'm looking down at his side, and I could see that those he wore thermal underwear as a wrestling tights, and then a pair of blue gym shorts and those tennis shoes. And when he had me in the headline, I'm looking down and seeing that, it literally brought back, I was like transported back to that time. It was like really being in the ring with Andy again.
And how about Milos Forman? I mean, what was working with Milos Forman as a director?
Milos was good. He was very good. That was the first time that, of course, Milos Forman is a big-time director. You know, he directed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus, a lot of big movies. And I actually thought he would be more intimidating and more forceful and that sort of thing. But he was just a real easygoing guy, laid back. I mean, he would let you make suggestions and just basically he let the actors pretty much do what they wanted to do, and he just kind of stood back and got shots here and there, and he was really a neat guy.
And speaking of, I mean, what's the outlook for the King, Jerry King Lawler? I mean, you know, you're a legend. You fought in all the greats. What we're going to see? What's the future outlook for Jerry King Lawler?
Well, you know, no, I mean, I always say nothing's sure in life except change. Everything's going to change, and as we talked about, I've been in the wrestling business over about 30 years, and I can honestly say that I've seen more changes in this business in the last month than I've seen in the entire 30 years. So, I mean, you know, things are happening so fast, and I don't think the changes are through yet. You know, Vince now has bought the WCW, or what was left of the WCW, and so now he has no competition, and that's not good. And even Vince knows that's not good, so that's why he's going to try to create the illusion that WCW is his competition. But in this day and time of the internet, and people are smarter than they used to be, they'll see through that, and it'll be like the old NWO angle in the WCW. It won't last long. As a matter of fact, it may even be detrimental to Vince. But he knows that no competition is not good. So I think that some other group, somebody else will put together an organization, get on another cable channel, and you know, that's where the King may wind up, and the Cat also. And I think that would be good even for Vince. That'll be good for everybody.
Well, why don't you start a wrestling association? I mean, you have the knowledge. I mean, you're intelligent. You're smart. Why don't you start something in another wrestling association?
Well, it's not that you're right. I have the ability, I have the knowledge, and I'm smart. But in all honesty, it would probably take about a $25 million investment. And even though, you know, I got enough money to live on the rest of my life, provided I don't want to buy anything, I don't want to invest that kind of money in something that, I mean, quite frankly, it'll be a big risk. You know, you'd be taking a chance. But there are investors around. The only thing that's really stopping that from happening right now is a cable channel like Fox or USA saying that what it's going to take is them saying, hey, come on, I'll put wrestling on. And once one of those stations says that, then somebody will be there with the money and with the talent. And I think the only thing the cable stations are waiting for is to make sure that that they get in bed with a company that's going to last.
And you know, not only that, what I was noticed is, in one of the WF and everything, since you left, you know, it's not the same. You know, they put Paul Heyman, who to me he's not the caliber like you are. You're a great commentator and a great wrestler. I mean, you could do it all.
Well, you know, I'm not here to knock Paul Heyman. I mean, you know, he, I guess he's doing the best that he can do. But I think instead of saying he's no good, I think you put it the best. It's probably his best way to say it is that it's not the same. And I think that everybody will agree that JR and I were a good combination. And so what they've gone from is a good combination to something that most people feel is not as good. And it's different, to say the least. And, you know, what we had was very successful. And so we want to thank everybody for walking in front of the camera. That's okay. But what we had was very successful, and you know, it's going to have to be proven if what they have now is going to be as successful as what they had.
And will there be a match between Ric Flair?
I don't think so. I think Rick is pretty much. Well, I mean, you know, he'll still wrestle occasionally. But to be honest with you, you know, there's a few people in the business. We're having to stop people from walking in front of the camera. But there are a few people in the business that genuinely didn't get along with each other. And Ric Flair and I are two of those people. So, I mean, he's not going to seek me out to have a match, and I'm not going to seek him out to have a match. You know, we just don't ever communicate.
That's a shame, because I would love to. I bet you that would be the best match of all time. Well, I'll tell you right now, Jerry King Lawler, it's great to shake